During the National Day holiday, my girlfriend suddenly said she had to work overtime and couldn't go on the trip with me. I felt sorry for her, knowing how tired she must be, so I immediately bought a train ticket to her city, planning to surprise her. But when I opened the door, it was her first love who greeted me. "Baby, who is it?" My girlfriend was hanging a man's clothes on the balcony and casually asked this, which made my heart grow colder. As soon as she saw me, the expression on her face began to crack. I sneered and slapped the bouquet of flowers I had bought for her in her first love's face. "The house is mine. I'm taking it back now." During the National Day holiday, Mia suddenly had to work overtime, which ruined the trip we had planned a month ago. After hearing the news, I immediately booked a high-speed train to her city. I didn't tell Mia beforehand. I just brought a bouquet of flowers and waited in front of her apartment, planning to surprise her. But what I didn't expect was to unexpectedly see Mia holding another man's hand right in front of me. The man was Evans, Mia's first love. Mia was carrying a bag of snacks, and Evans was holding a basket of vegetables. They walked together in a sweet couple-like way, completely unaware of my presence. It was only when Mia finally saw me that she hurriedly let go of Evan's hand and stiffly walked towards me. "Bill, you came without telling me in advance?" I suppressed my emotions and casually said, "I was going to surprise you." But looking at Mia, it seemed like there was only surprise, not joy. Sure enough, Mia frowned and muttered, "This is so sudden." Evans spoke up. "Mia, Bill traveled so far to see you. Why stand outside to talk? Come inside." He casually pulled out a key and opened the door for me, as if he were the one living here. I almost forgot that this was the house I had bought for Mia. She once mentioned that the house was nice, and after I begged the landlord for it, I paid a high price to secure it for her. Now it seemed I had become an outsider. Once inside, Evans casually sat on the couch and started playing with his phone. Mia, on the other hand, tied on an apron and began cooking. I was stunned. I never knew the Mia who always refused to touch anything in the kitchen would actually cook. Mia quickly made 4 dishes and a soup, but every dish contained seafood. She enthusiastically served Evans porridge, jokingly saying, "Drink it while it's hot, Mr. Young Master who can't live without seafood porridge." Evans lovingly rubbed her head. "You're so good to me, baby." They flirted back and forth for a while, before finally remembering that I was still there. Mia asked me, "Bill, have you eaten?" I said softly, "I'm allergic to seafood." For a few seconds, there was awkward silence in the living room. Evans hurriedly asked, "Bill, why didn't you say anything earlier? You didn't accidentally eat any fish or crab, did you?" I shook my head. "No." He smiled and casually rested his elbow on Mia's shoulder. "See, Mia was so busy serving me seafood that she forgot to make something you could eat." Mia also laughed. "Stop being cheeky. You know I care about you, so eat up while it's still hot." Okay, I'll obey." I had come here in a rush, unable to buy a flight ticket due to the time crunch. After sitting on a high-speed train for over 10 hours, I hadn't felt tired, just excited to see Mia. But when I finally saw her, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. I endured my hunger watching as Mia and Evans completely ignored me while happily serving each other food and whispering sweet nothings. It wasn't until the meal ended that Evans showed no sign of leaving. I asked Mia, "Do you guys live together?" Evans shrugged and nodded nonchalantly. My chest tightened. Mia smiled at Evans and said gently, "Yes, Evans was living alone and I couldn't leave him alone. His lease expired and since I had a spare room, I just let him move in. We can keep an eye on each other." Evans affectionately squeezed Mia's cheek and sighed. "Honestly, I'm a little embarrassed. Even though I'm an adult, I can't live without Mia's care. I've been in this gentle world for so long, it's hard to leave. In this world, girls like Mia, who don't want anything and are selflessly devoted, are rare, right, Bill?" I remained silent. Mia laughed and pushed him playfully. "You're such a tease." After a round of banter, Mia glanced at the clock and turned to me with a slightly apologetic look. "Bill, it's getting late. I'll take you back to your hotel?" I glanced at the suitcase she handed me and pushed it aside, my voice serious. "Mia, have you forgotten who your boyfriend is?" From the moment I arrived in this city and saw Mia for the first time, she had been holding Evan's hand. She clearly remembered Evan's preferences and had been feeding him in front of me as if I didn't exist. She had been living with Evans in the apartment I bought for her, all without my knowledge. And now she was asking me to leave. I felt like the joke that I had been standing outside, waiting for hours with flowers in my hand, had turned into a sad reality. In fact, there had been signs all along. After graduation, Mia didn't want to stay locally. She insisted on moving to the city, even though our mutual friend had warned me that Evans was here starting his business. But I didn't want to let baseless suspicions ruin Mia's choice. I supported her fully, thinking that distance wouldn't be an obstacle to our relationship. But Mia grew increasingly cold toward me. Even our daily video calls started to dwindle. Especially in the last month, she had been canceling on me under the excuse of overtime work. We were already talking about marriage, and we had even planned to meet each other's parents during the mid-autumn festival. But Mia disappeared on that day, leaving me and my parents awkwardly eating a large meal prepared for her. The next day, she called to apologize using the excuse of an urgent work assignment. Then she casually resumed discussing our travel plans for the National Day holiday. 2 days ago, she once again canceled our plans, and my heart sank. Despite feeling disappointed, I still agreed, understanding her strong career ambitions. But when I came to her city, I was struck hard by the shocking reality. Hearing my words, Mia's face immediately darkened. "Bill, what do you mean by that?" I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and said coldly, "You're living with Evans, a man you've known for years, in the house I bought for you, and you want me to stay at a hotel? Don't you think that's a bit much, Mia?" I never imagined that the principle Mia always held dear would be so easily broken in front of Evans. When I asked her this question, Mia completely lost her temper. She glared at me, her eyes icy cold as if she wanted to devour me. "Bill, are you accusing me? Evans and I have done nothing wrong. You should stop having these dirty thoughts. Yes, this house was bought by you, but was I the one who asked you to buy it for me? And as my boyfriend, isn't it your duty to buy me a house? If you're going to say it like that, then I'll leave." Saying that, Mia started packing her things. Evans immediately stopped her and gently comforted her. "Mia, calm down, don't get upset." He then turned to me with a look of disdain and said, "Bill, aren't you making a big deal out of nothing? Mia and I have known each other for years. We're like family. Calling us a couple is going a bit too far." After saying this, he snorted and continued to soothe Mia. Seeing Evans, Mia's emotions seemed to calm down a little. "Bill, let's talk outside." Mia grabbed me and pulled me a distance away, stopping under a streetlight. Her attitude softened as she blinked her eyes and forced out a few tears. I was stunned. In just a few minutes, her attitude had changed so drastically. "Bill, did you misunderstand me? But even so, you shouldn't say such hurtful things." I was a bit surprised. "If anything is hurtful, Mia, isn't it your actions that are more hurtful?" She sniffled and spoke in broken sentences. "I didn't do anything wrong, you misunderstood me. You don't know, the reason I let Evan stay is because he recently failed in his business. He was in a very bad state and couldn't even afford rent. You know, I've known Evans since we were kids. My family was poor, and if it weren't for Evans always being there for me, encouraging me, I wouldn't have made it this far. So when he faced such difficulties, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. That's why I let him stay here. Bill, can you understand?" Mia had tears on her face, looking at me with pleading eyes. Seeing that I still didn't say anything, she raised her hand and swore. "I know I should have told you earlier, but I promise I'll have Evans move out tonight." I looked at her with suspicion. "Really?" Mia nodded firmly. "I promise." But I didn't know if I could believe her anymore. Mia then coquettishly dragged me into a hotel, speaking softly. "Bill, stay here tonight and get some rest. Tomorrow I'll take you to eat something nice." Before I could say anything, she kissed me lightly on the cheek and quickly left. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The next morning, I went to knock on her apartment door again. Evans, who was supposed to have moved out the night before, appeared at the door in nothing but a pair of shorts, still half asleep. He had a bandage on his lip, which he tried to hide. When he saw me, his brows immediately furrowed in annoyance. "Bill, coming to disturb me so early in the morning? That's not very nice, is it?" Saying this, he tried to close the door. I could no longer suppress the anger building in my chest. I shoved him aside and stormed into the apartment. The bedroom door was wide open and Mia was hurriedly putting on a camisole. But that couldn't hide the large red marks on her neck. "Bill, what are you doing here? Didn't I tell you I'd come to find you today?" Mia's eyes flickered, and she was secretly stuffing something under the pillow. I grabbed Mia's arm and pulled her up from the bed. The floor was littered with Evan's clothes, and the bed sheets were all wrinkled, as if they had just been used. It was clear that they hadn't just been living together, they had been sleeping together. Evans rushed over and shoved me away. He shielded Mia behind him, pointing at me and shouting angrily, "Bill, I've been tolerating you for Mia's sake. I didn't expect you to act worse and worse, trying to drag her around right in front of me. Are you even a man?" He became increasingly furious. "You better get out of here, or else ... The one who should get out is you." I reminded him. "Did you forget? This house was bought by me. Get out." "You!" Evans, enraged and humiliated, raised his fist and lunged at me. The moment his punch came toward me, I swiftly grabbed his wrist and without hesitation, threw a punch to his face. He collapsed to the ground, clutching his nose in pain, unable to say a word. I pointed toward the door, my hand trembling with fury. "Get out. Now." Mia stumbled as she helped Evans to his feet. Her eyes were bloodshot as she screamed at me. "Bill, are you insane? How could you just hit someone like that? If you're really sick, go get treated. Stop making a scene." I looked at Mia, feeling as if my heart had been torn into 1,000 pieces. "Yes, I am sick." I angrily threw a men's pajama at Mia's face. "Mia, only a madman would let you toy with him like this and keep tolerating it. Yesterday I almost believed your lies, thinking I was overthinking. Now I realize I've underestimated you all this time. Mia, your shamelessness is truly eye-opening." Mia had never heard me speak to her this harshly. She couldn't argue back, so she just bit her lower lip, glaring at me stubbornly. But after a moment, she returned to her previous arrogant attitude. Her eyes even showed a hint of disappointment as she looked at me. Mia trembled as she asked, "So, this is why you rushed over here so early? You've always suspected something between me and Evans. Bill, since you've been thinking this for so long, why couldn't you just say it? Why make such a scene? You're so hypocritical." I couldn't believe it. After all this, Mia was still twisting things, making it seem like it was my lack of trust that was the problem. I closed my eyes, coldly asking, "Do you think I've wronged you, Mia? Is that the point?" Mia retorted, "Bill, from the moment you started doubting me, the trust between us was already broken. I'm very disappointed in you. You should go back and think things over." She opened the door, standing there as though ushering me out. Evans wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up, backing her up. "Bill, for Mia's sake, I'll let this go this time. But don't let it happen again. Get out now. Don't show your face around us again." I clenched my fists and stepped toward Evans. His confidence faltered immediately, and he began to retreat, stammering, What do you want?" I kicked his clothes that were scattered on the floor. "Did you not hear what I said? Get out, now." "Bill." Mia suddenly rushed over, pulling Evans behind her, and threatening me in a low voice. "Evans is being kind by not holding you accountable for what you did today. Don't push your luck." I sneered and calmly stared at Mia. She glared at me with a look full of disgust. For all these years, I had given her everything I had. But in the end, this was what I got. I sighed deeply, locking eyes with Mia. "While I've been busy chasing him out, I almost forgot to chase you out as well. Mia, we're breaking up. You and him, get out." Mia, who had already taken out her phone to call the police, froze completely when she heard this. She looked up at me in disbelief. "Bill, what did you just say? First, we're breaking up. Second, get out?" The first reiterated. But Mia clearly thought I was joking, and she sneered. "Are you trying to play some psychological game?" I didn't waste any more words. Without mercy, I kicked Mia and Evans out of the house. The commotion immediately attracted a crowd of residents to watch. Evans, who had been loudly cursing and insulting me, suddenly changed his approach when he saw the scene. He shakily extended his finger at me, then clutched his chest in pain and collapsed to the ground. Mia screamed and hurried over to Evans, slapping his face in panic. Evans, don't faint. What's wrong with you? Wake up!" The crowd began whispering among themselves. Mia shouted at them, "Stop staring! Someone, call an ambulance." Then, with a venomous glare, she turned to me, screaming in hysteria. "Bill, do you have to go this far? Now look at what you've done to Evans. If something happens to him, I will make you pay." I chuckled coldly, stepped forward, and kicked Evans. Stop pretending. If you're going to die, don't do it at my doorstep. It's bad luck. Mia glared at me, her voice cold as ice. Bill, do you think everyone is as fake as you playing these games? Do you have any idea that some illnesses can be life-threatening when they hit? At that moment, an elderly woman pushed through the crowd. She pointed at Mia and said, "What happened to your boyfriend? Why is he lying on the ground?" Boyfriend." Mia's eyes lit up when she saw her, as if she had found a lifeline. She quickly pulled the woman to Evan's side. "Grandma Jang, please check Evan's pulse. He collapsed after a shock to his heart." The old woman calmly placed her hand on Evan's wrist, then puzzledly said, "Strange, his pulse feels strong. There's nothing serious. Why would he suddenly faint?" Mia frowned and said, "Grandma Jang, I know you come from a family of traditional medicine, which is why I asked you to check him. Now you're saying nothing's wrong? How could he just faint for no reason?" The old woman immediately looked displeased, about to argue with Mia. But before she could speak, an ambulance arrived with its siren blaring. 2 medical staff members got out and lifted Evans onto the stretcher. Mia followed them onto the ambulance, but before leaving, she sneered at me and said, "Bill, just because you have a little money doesn't mean you're important. Our lives may not be worth much to you, but that doesn't mean you can trample all over us." Watching Mia leave with the ambulance, I felt a sudden sense of emptiness after the relief washed over me. So this is how Mia has always seen me. I met Mia in college. At that time, we were both in the design school, but I didn't have a deep impression of Mia. She was very quiet, almost to the point of being antisocial, always alone and keeping to herself. But later, as if by some silent agreement, I kept running into her in various places around campus. Sometimes in the cafeteria, sometimes in the bubble tea shop, sometimes in the convenience store. She always appeared there working part-time. At that time, I actually admired her a bit. How could a girl have the energy to juggle both school and part-time jobs, working day and night without rest? But back then, my feelings toward Mia were only curiosity. Until one afternoon, I was sitting by the lake on campus, practicing sketching, when I heard soft sobs coming from behind a tree. At first I thought about leaving, but then I heard Mia arguing loudly on the phone. It turned out that Mia's parents weren't locals and didn't have much understanding of her situation. They thought Mia's schooling here was a waste of money and repeatedly urged her to go back home and get married, or else they would cut off her financial support. But Mia was adamant about not wanting to drop out of school. After hanging up the phone, she squatted under the tree, crying for a long time. It was then that I finally understood why Mia had been working so many part-time jobs around campus. She was working desperately just to secure a better future for herself. I was deeply moved by Mia's resilience and vitality. That evening, I went to meet with my advisor. I decided to anonymously sponsor Mia, helping her get through her college years. After a few months of providing financial help, one day Mia invited me to dinner. Actually, before this meal, I had already suspected that Mia knew something. Sure enough, once we sat down, Mia handed me a loan note. Her face was red, and she stuttered as she said, "Joe, I know about the sponsorship. Thank you for always helping me behind the scenes. Please keep this loan note for now. I'll definitely repay you properly in the future." I couldn't help but laugh at her awkwardness and quickly pushed the loan note back. I explained, "Don't worry too much about it. Let's just treat each other as normal classmates, and you don't need to pay me back, really." That evening, after much persuasion, Mia still couldn't hand me the loan note. But after that, she often brought me breakfast, quietly waiting for me while I played basketball, just to pass me water after the game. Through repeated interactions, we gradually became familiar and eventually ended up together. After we started dating, I understood more about Mia's hardships. Her family background was far worse than I had imagined. It was also then that I learned about Evans. Evans had grown up with Mia. They were childhood friends and Mia's first love. Mia told me that Evans had helped her when she was struggling, so even though they had broken up, they remained friends, almost like family, and still kept in touch. I believed her, so I didn't ask any further questions. It wasn't until much later that I realized Mia had given some of the money I had provided her to Evans. Because so many years had passed, I hadn't brought up this issue with Mia, fearing it would touch a sensitive spot. Yes, Mia had always been very sensitive about money. Even after we started dating, I respected her, cared for her, and made sure to protect her dignity. But Mia would always use my family's wealth as an excuse, saying that I didn't understand the struggles of people from her background, and we would often argue about this topic. Because I pitied Mia's unfortunate situation, I always tolerated her. Mia was ambitious and wanted to achieve self-worth through her work. After graduation, she decided to move to this city to pursue her career on her own. Even though I didn't know much about this city, I still silently supported her. I bought her a house here and asked a friend to introduce her to a promising design company locally. But it wasn't until now that I realized the real reason Mia came here was Evans. No matter what I did for her, I was just a stepping stone on her path to success. I was nothing but a rich kid she looked down upon, with all the money and no real value. A boyfriend with an empty reputation who was easily manipulated. I hired 2 cleaners to thoroughly clean the apartment, removing all traces of Mia and Evans. But no matter how hard I tried, the house still felt off. After thinking carefully, I decided it might be best to sell the place. I called Reed, a family friend, and told him everything that had happened. Reed was furious after hearing my story, and he especially emphasized, "Bill, Mia has definitely fooled you. She said she's too busy with work." I found her a job at a company known for having the best working conditions in the industry. They never make employees work overtime, especially not on holidays. Honestly, I had suspected as much myself. When you're too involved, it's hard to see things clearly. It wasn't until I looked at the relationship from an outsider's perspective that I realized how foolish and naive I had been. Reed continued cautiously. "Bill, actually there's one more thing I've been meaning to tell you. The manager at Mia's company has been giving me feedback that Mia's been slacking off at work. She often gets a call and rushes off without explanation. Now that I think about it, the person who's been calling her must be Evans. If it wasn't for my connections, she probably would have been fired multiple times by now." I cleared my throat and replied seriously, "Reed, Mia and I have broken up. You don't need to worry about that anymore. If she's not qualified, let's just follow the rules and fire her." Reed nodded at me approvingly. "Forget about her then. Let's get back to the main topic. Bill, I came to you today because I want to sell this apartment. This apartment was originally bought to make it easier for Mia to work. I never expected it to become the place where she and Evans were having their affair. Now, every time I look at it, it just feels wrong. Since I'm not planning to develop in this city, it's better to sell this place and get rid of this painful memory." "Sure, no problem." Reed agreed immediately. "I know a few salespeople who can help you sell it quickly." As Reed was flipping through his contacts, he suddenly brightened up. "Hey Bill, I just remembered that my cousin is looking to buy a place here. How about we sell it to her directly? We can go with the price you paid for it." "Okay, sounds good." I nodded. "The price doesn't really matter. I just want to get rid of it as soon as possible. Actually, I had planned to transfer this apartment to Mia's name a long time ago. But she always made excuses about working overtime or being too busy, so it never happened. Now, the apartment was still in my name, and every time I saw it, it only made me feel uncomfortable. My only goal was to quickly get rid of this burden and sever all ties with the past." After saying goodbye to Reed and returning home, I realized I had received a lot of missed calls. All of them were from Mia. Since I hadn't answered the calls, she sent me several text messages. "Bill, Evans has woken up. The doctor diagnosed him with low blood sugar, which caused him to faint. Although it's not a serious condition, he can't be easily stimulated anymore. I thought about it carefully after I came back, and maybe you were just too concerned about me today, which caused you to make that mistake. It's understandable within limits. But you can't go too far, you know? Like, hitting Evans now, that's too much. Of course, I've said a few good things about you in front of Evans. How about this? You come over now, apologize to Evans, and buy him some supplements. We can pretend this never happened." "Bill, pick up the phone." Avoiding this won't help. The only thing you can do now is apologize. Quickly. Time's ticking. I was scrolling through these ridiculous messages when, right after, Mia's call came through again. I instinctively pressed the accept button. The next moment, Mia's urgent accusations came pouring out. "Bill, I've called you so many times. Why aren't you answering? Is it fun to make people worry by disappearing like this? Does she really care about me? How laughable." I calmly responded, "Mia, if you have something to say, just say it." This time, Mia didn't care about my tone because she had something more urgent to say. "I just got a call from the department manager. She said the company's going to fire me. What's going on with that? Quick? Asked Reed. He's the one who got me this job and now I've been fired out of the blue. He can't escape responsibility for this. Mia angrily relayed her complaints, then suddenly thought of something and changed her tone. Forget it. I don't care about that crappy company anymore. You go ask your friends to help me find more companies. I need to choose carefully. But now I'm going to make that company pay for this. You get me 2 lawyers. I want to file for labor arbitration. If they don't compensate me a large sum, I'm not leaving that company so easily. Bill, say something. Are you dumb? You need to take care of this as soon as possible, got it? I'm not going to let this slide. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? But weren't you just forcing me to apologize to Evans? Mia paused for a moment, then said, You go call the lawyers for me first. After that, come to the hospital right away. I really didn't expect Mia to be so quick in giving me orders. Then again, after all these years, this might be my only worth in her life. I'm not going. I flatly refused and reminded her. Mia, we've broken up. You can hire your own lawyers. And just so, being fired for slacking off at work won't get you anywhere, even with a lawyer. After saying that, I hung up the phone without caring about Mia's furious protests. Maybe it was because I had already given up on Mia that I could be so decisive in preparing to leave. After I blocked Mia's contact, I received a friend request on WeChat. It was from Reed's cousin Coco. Actually, I had met Coco when she was very young, and since we were both from the same hometown, it felt like fate that we were both living in this city now. That evening, I had a long conversation with Coco, and the next day she asked to meet me to discuss the house. I took Coco to tour the apartment. She was very satisfied with the layout and lighting. Coco curiously asked me, Bill, this house is really nice. Why are you in such a rush to sell it? I didn't hide anything and explained the situation honestly. Coco wrinkled her nose and said with a hint of disdain, That's really awkward. Don't worry, once I take over this place, I'll have to do a major renovation, maybe even clean it for 3 days and nights before moving in. Her words made me laugh. We were chatting and laughing as we walked out of the apartment, planning to grab lunch somewhere. But when I opened the door, we were met with an angry Mia. She pointed at me and shouted, Bill, no wonder you wanted to break up with me. You've already found someone else. You're playing both sides. How disgusting. I said sternly, Mia, this is my friend. Show some respect. Mia scoffed and spat. Huh, a friend? I see her as nothing but a shameless mistress. What's your problem? Can't you speak properly? Coco stood up for herself. She wasn't about to swallow Mia's deliberate provocation. But before any of us could react, Mia suddenly grabbed Coco's hair and slapped her hard across the face. Coco screamed in pain, but Mia didn't let go of her hair, still ready to strike again. Mia, are you crazy? I quickly pried Mia's fingers off Coco's hair and pushed her away, standing protectively in front of Coco. Mia's eyes immediately filled with tears, and she looked at me in disbelief. Bill, you pushed me for another woman? How could you do this to me? After calming Coco down, I said coldly, Mia, we've broken up. She's just my friend. Don't make a scene. Coco grabbed my arm. Bill, don't waste your time with her. Let's call the police right now. Okay. I pulled out my phone and dialed 110. Mia stood there, stunned, watching me dial the police. She seemed deeply shaken, her lips trembling. Bill, are you really going to have me arrested for this? She pointed at Coco with fury. For this woman, you're going to send me to jail? Bill, don't you love me anymore? I chuckled bitterly. Mia, before you ask that, maybe you should think about what you've done to me. The police car arrived quickly. After explaining the situation to the officers, Mia didn't say a word. She was taken away in the police car, her face full of disbelief and pain. As for her tears, I pretended not to see them. After all, this was how she had treated me every day for so long. In the middle of buying the house, there was such a huge mess that Coco became fearful of the city. Coco sighed and said, Bill, I've realized that there are too many strange people in a new city. It's better to go home. After discussing it together, we decided to list the apartment on a real estate platform and wait for a lucky buyer. After quickly handling things here, Coco and I took the same flight back to Hiking. To apologize, I invited Coco to have a meal and rest. Since Reed was involved, my parents knew Coco as well, so I invited her to join us at home. At the dinner table, I noticed how well behaved and understanding Coco was, just the type of girl parents love. Our parents also subtly tried to match us up. During this simple time together, Coco and I hit it off, and I started considering taking things further. 2 weeks later, after finishing work, I was about to drive to meet Coco for a shopping trip. But unexpectedly, I saw Mia downstairs at my office. Maybe because she had been in detention for a few days, Mia looked much more worn out now. As soon as she saw me, she dropped to her knees in front of me. I was startled by her sudden action and instinctively tried to avoid her. "Mia, what are you doing?" Mia was crying, her face covered in tears as she choked out, "Bill, don't leave me, please. I know everything now. You're seeing that woman and you're planning to marry her. You can't do this to me. You promised me you'd never marry anyone but me. I've realized it now. Only you've ever truly cared for me. Evans has been lying to me. He's only using me for my money. Evans keeps saying he's going to start a business, but in reality, he's just making excuses to ask me for money, and he treats me like a maid. Bill, I'm so stupid. I let a man like that make me say such terrible things to you. Bill, please give me another chance. I love you more than anything. Without you, I don't know how I'll live." She cried, holding my leg tightly, tears streaming down. I bent down and gently pried her fingers off my leg. "Mia, you don't love me. You just love someone who will give you whatever you want without expecting anything in return. Unfortunately, that person has already been pushed away by you. I've moved on and have my own life now. Please leave and don't come back. You can't do this." Mia screamed in pain. "Bill, are you still upset about what happened this morning?" But Evans and I didn't do anything. We didn't go all the way. Please believe me. She quickly took off her coat, exposing her red, raw skin. "I've washed it all clean. I've removed the marks. Please, give me another chance." She stared at me, hoping to find a hint of sympathy in my expression. But there was none. I sighed deeply and said coldly, "It doesn't matter to me anymore. Mia, take care of yourself." Mia collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably without any regard for her image. I didn't look back as I walked straight to the car, heading down the road. Not far away, Coco was waiting for me. I had finally let go of all the pain Mia had caused me, and I was ready to embrace a new life with a new person.